The trail should have been easy to follow. At least that's what Caleb Mercer had told himself when he first set out. The wagon had left clear marks deep in the dirt wheels cutting through dry ground, like a promise that nothing had gone wrong. But that was 2 days ago. Now the trail was broken, scattered, the earth disturbed in ways that didn't make sense to a normal journey. Caleb slowed his horse, his eyes narrowing as he leaned slightly forward in the saddle, studying the ground. The tracks twisted off the main path, veering into rougher land where no driver with sense would willingly go. He exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else. He nudged the horse forward, following the marks carefully, each step taking him further away from the road he had expected her to be on, further away from anything safe. The wind moved low across the land, carrying dust with it, the sky wide and empty above him. But Caleb didn't notice any of it. Not really. His focus stayed locked on the trail, on the faint signs that told him he was still on the right path. Her path. The woman he had never met. The one he had only known through letters written in careful handwriting, filled with hope and quiet strength. A mail-order bride. Some men laughed at the idea, some didn't trust it. But Caleb, he had believed in it. Not because he was desperate, but because something in her words had felt real, honest, like she was searching for something more than just a place to go. And so was he. Her name was Anna. She was supposed to arrive 3 days ago. He had waited at the station longer than he would admit, watched every wagon, every face until the sun dropped and the platform emptied. But she never came. At first he thought there had been a delay. Then he heard about a wagon heading this way, carrying passengers from the east. One of them, a young woman traveling alone. The timing matched. That's when he started riding. The trail ahead grew worse. The wagon tracks splintered, one wheel mark deeper than the other, like something had gone wrong halfway through the journey. Caleb dismounted slowly, crouching near the ground, his fingers brushing against the dirt. He didn't need long to see it. A break. The wheel had cracked or bent, forced to drag uneven across the land. His chest tightened. He stood again, scanning the area. This wasn't just bad luck. This was trouble. He mounted quickly, urging the horse forward at a faster pace now, no longer following just out of curiosity, but out of urgency. The land dipped slightly ahead, leading into a narrow stretch between low ridges where the wind didn't reach as easily. Shadows lingered longer there, even in daylight. Caleb slowed again as he entered the space, his instincts sharpening. He saw it then. The wagon, or what was left of it, tilted on one side, one wheel completely broken. The wood splintered as if it had taken a hard hit. The canvas top was torn, flapping slightly in the breeze. The place was empty. Too empty. Caleb dismounted immediately, his boots hitting the ground hard as he moved closer, his eyes scanning everything. The dirt around the wagon told a story, a struggle, footprints, not just one set, multiple, and not calm ones. These were fast, chaotic, some leading away, some circling. He felt something cold settle in his chest. He moved around the wagon quickly, checking inside. Empty, no supplies left, no sign of the driver, no sign of her. But then he saw it, a small piece of fabric caught on a jagged edge of the broken wood, light-colored, delicate. He reached out, pulling it free, his fingers tightening as he recognized it. A part of a dress. Not just any dress, her dress. He knew it because she had described it once in a letter, said it was the only fine thing she owned, the one she planned to wear when she arrived. Caleb's jaw clenched. He looked back at the ground again, reading the tracks with new urgency. The footprints leading away were clearer now, a smaller set among them. Hers. He stood quickly, his entire body shifting from concern to action. He wasn't too late. Not yet. He followed the trail, moving fast now, the broken wagon fading behind him as the path led deeper into rough land where the ground grew harder to read. The sun moved lower in the sky, shadows stretching longer across his path, but he didn't slow. He couldn't. His mind ran through possibilities, none of them good. Bandits, looters, men who saw a broken wagon and an easy target. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on what mattered. She was alive. She had to be. The trail narrowed eventually, forcing him to dismount again as the terrain became too uneven for riding. He tied the reins loosely, letting the horse follow behind as he moved on foot, his eyes scanning every inch of ground, every mark, every sign. And then he saw it again. A footprint deeper than the rest, dragging slightly like whoever made it was struggling, maybe injured, maybe weak. His pace quickened, his breathing steady but heavier now as the urgency grew stronger with each step. The land opened slightly ahead, revealing a small dip in the earth, a natural hollow, partially hidden by rock and brush. Caleb slowed his instincts, telling him to be careful now, to watch for anything that might still be there. He reached the edge of the hollow, his gaze sweeping across it once, and then stopping. She lay there barely visible against the ground, her body still, her dress torn and covered in dust. His heart dropped hard in his chest. "Anna," he called out, moving down quickly toward her. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands careful but urgent as he turned her slightly. Her face was pale, her lips dry, her breathing shallow but there. His chest tightened with relief so sharp it almost hurt. "You're alive," he muttered more to himself than to her. Her eyes fluttered slightly at the sound of his voice, but didn't fully open. He looked around quickly, scanning for any sign of the men who had done this, but the area was quiet now. Too quiet. He didn't trust it. He couldn't. But staying here wasn't an option. He slipped one arm carefully beneath her, lifting her gently, trying not to cause more pain than she was already in. She stirred weakly, a faint sound escaping her lips. "Easy," he said softly, his voice lowering instinctively. "You're safe now." He didn't know if she could hear him, if she understood, but he said it anyway. He carried her back toward the horse, his steps steady but quick, every second feeling heavier than the last. As he reached the horse, he paused just long enough to adjust his grip before lifting her carefully into the saddle, then climbing up behind her to keep her steady. He turned the horse back toward open land, his mind already racing ahead. He needed shelter, water, time, and distance from whoever had left her like this. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the ground as he rode hard away from the broken trail, away from the past few hours that had already changed everything. He glanced down at her once, her head resting lightly against his chest, her breathing still faint but steady. And in that moment, Caleb Mercer knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just a rescue. This was the beginning of something neither of them had planned, and something he wasn't going to walk away from. He tightened his hold on the reins, urging the horse forward as the last light of day stretched thin across the land. The wind picked up again, colder now, carrying the kind of chill that settled deep and stayed there. Anna's weight rested against him, fragile and unsteady, her breathing still shallow, but there. He adjusted his arm around her, keeping her secure as the horse moved over uneven ground. "Stay with me," he murmured quietly, though he wasn't sure if she could hear him or if the words were more for himself than for her. The trail back toward open land felt longer than before, every shadow seeming deeper, every sound sharper. His mind stayed alert, scanning constantly for any sign of movement, any hint that they were being followed. But the land behind them remained empty, at least for now. When the first outline of his cabin finally came into view in the distance, Caleb let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. It wasn't much, just a small structure set against the edge of a low ridge, but it was safe. It was his. He pushed the horse harder, closing the distance quickly as the sky darkened further. By the time he reached the cabin, night had settled fully around them. He dismounted fast but careful, lifting Anna down into his arms, her body light, too light. He carried her inside without hesitation, the door shutting firmly behind him, cutting off the cold. He laid her gently on the narrow bed, his movements steady but urgent. He moved quickly after that, building a fire, his hands working with practiced speed until flames rose, casting warm light through the small space. He grabbed a blanket, draping it over her before stepping back just long enough to look at her properly. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt, her lips cracked, her hands bruised and scraped. His jaw tightened at the sight of it. He moved to the small shelf, grabbing what little supplies he had, watercloth, a bit of medicine, not much but enough to start. He knelt beside her, carefully lifting her head just enough to bring water to her lips. "Slow," he said softly as she stirred faintly. A small amount slipped past her lips, and she swallowed weakly. The motion, barely there but real. He repeated it patiently, giving her what he could without rushing. With each small sign of response, his chest eased just slightly. He cleaned the worst of the dirt from her hands and face, his movements careful, deliberate, not wanting to cause more pain. Her breathing steadied, gradually, not strong, but better than before. Time passed in quiet, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the occasional faint movement from her. Caleb sat nearby, watching, waiting, unwilling to leave her side even for a moment. He had seen injuries before. He had seen what happened when help came too late. He wasn't going to let that happen here. Not with her. Not now. Sometime deep into the night, her eyes finally opened, just a fraction unfocused at first, then slowly finding shape. She looked at him, confusion flickering across her face, before fear followed her body, tensing weakly. "Easy," Caleb said quickly, his voice low and steady. "You're safe." Her gaze moved around the cabin, then back to him, her lips parting slightly. "Where?" He leaned forward just enough to keep his voice within her reach. "My place. You're all right." She swallowed with effort, her eyes searching his face like she was trying to piece together something she couldn't fully remember. "The wagon," he nodded once. "I found it." Her expression tightened, pain flashing across it. They came out of nowhere." Her voice was barely more than a breath. He didn't push her, didn't ask for more than she could give. "You don't have to talk now," he said quietly. "Just rest." But she shook her head weakly, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket like she needed to hold on to something real. "They took everything," she whispered. "I tried to run." His jaw clenched, the image forming too clearly in his mind. "You did what you had to do." Her eyes softened slightly at that, but the fear hadn't left entirely. "They might come back." Caleb's gaze hardened just a fraction, but his voice stayed calm. "Let them." She looked at him, surprised by the certainty in his tone. He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. What mattered was that she understood one thing. She wasn't alone anymore. Her eyes slowly closed again, exhaustion pulling her back under. But this time her breathing stayed steadier, her body less tense. Caleb sat there, watching her for a long time after that, his mind turning over everything that had happened. The broken wagon, the tracks, the men who had done this. He knew they wouldn't forget. Not the kind who left someone like that and walked away. They would circle back eventually. And when they did, he leaned back slightly, his hand resting near his gun, his eyes shifting toward the door for a brief second before returning to her. He was ready. The night stretched on, but this time it felt different. The cabin wasn't just a place anymore. It was something worth protecting, something he had already decided he wouldn't lose. When morning finally came, the light crept slowly through the window, casting a soft glow across the room. Anna stirred again, her eyes opening more fully this time. She looked around, taking in her surroundings more clearly, before her gaze settled on him, still there, still watching. She hesitated, then spoke, her voice still weak but steadier than before. "You came for me." It wasn't a question. Caleb nodded once. "Yeah." A small silence passed between them before she asked the one thing that mattered most. "Why?" He didn't answer right away, his eyes holding hers steady. "Because I said I would." Her expression shifted slightly, something in her breaking and rebuilding at the same time. She let out a slow breath, her grip on the blanket loosening just enough to show she believed him. The weight of everything she had lost, everything she had almost become, faded just a little in that moment, replaced by something new, something uncertain but real. Trust. Caleb stood after a moment, moving to add more wood to the fire, his movements calm but purposeful. "You're not going back out there," he said without turning. She watched him quietly before answering. "I don't have anywhere else to go." He paused briefly, then looked back at her. "Then you stay here." The words settled into the space between them, simple but solid. She didn't argue. She didn't question. She just nodded slowly, the decision coming easier than she expected. The world outside hadn't changed. The danger was still there, waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. But inside that small cabin, something had shifted into place, something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. And as the light grew stronger, filling the room with warmth and clarity, Caleb Mercer understood something he hadn't allowed himself to think before. He hadn't just found his lost mail-order bride. He had found someone worth fighting for. And this time, he wasn't going to lose her.